The 6th of May 2023, this day will be deeply etched in the memories of millions of British citizens for years to come. Because for most of them, this was their first opportunity to witness the pomp and the pageantry of a coronation ceremony. Tens of thousands of people risked the rain and the cold to line up along the procession route as thousands celebrated with street parties. They have been celebrating this occasion. And it truly was a once-in-a-generation spectacle, an event filled with grandeur, a lot of splendor, with customs dating back over 1,000 years. And over the next few minutes, we are taking you through some of the key highlights, some of the biggest moments from this event, and discussing the many controversies surrounding this event as well. Let me just start with the protests for now. Over 6 anti-monarchists were arrested right before the coronation. And according to the police, they were leading members of the anti-monarchy group Republic. In fact, they were preparing to protest along the route of the procession. That was before the police nabbed them. And the demonstrators saying that these arrests are clear evidence of the UK's descent into fascism. In fact, the fans of the royal family could not care less. They gathered all along the procession route, desperately waiting to catch a glimpse of the king. The procession started at 10:20 a.m. local time, that's 2:50 p.m. Indian Standard Time, and that is when King Charles and Queen Camilla, or should I say their majesties, left Buckingham Palace for Westminster Abbey. In fact, they travelled in the Diamond Jubilee State Coach, which was created for Queen Elizabeth II to commemorate her 60th anniversary. And at around 10:53 a.m., the procession entered the Great West Door of Westminster Abbey, which is right behind me, with Charles wearing a red velvet robe of state. Underneath, he was wearing a military uniform rather than the more traditional breeches and silk stockings worn by kings before him. And he was joined by his grandson, Prince George, who might just be the future King of Britain. The 9-year-old was seen carrying Charles's robes as he led the page of honor arrivals at Westminster Abbey, a role that he shared with members of the Queen Consort's family. And as the king entered, the abbey had already been filled with royals from around the world. There were international leaders, charity representatives, religious figures, along with local heroes and members of the royal family, of course, at the forefront and the front and center of the ceremony. Many in full regalia, like the Prince and Princess of Wales. They were joined by their children, Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis, sitting on the front row of Westminster Abbey. And foreign royals in attendance as well, of course, including Prince Albert and Princess Charlene of Monaco, as well as King Jigme Thesar and Queen Jetsun Pema of Bhutan. And their outfits brought a pop of color to the distinctly grey day in a way. King Philippe VI and Queen Letizia of Spain and King Philippe and Queen Mathilde of Belgium were also seen entering the abbey together. Color coordinated in pink among the British leaders was also the Prime Minister, of course, Rishi Sunak, and he was joined by his wife, Akshata Murthy. There were also former Prime Ministers in attendance, including Boris Johnson, and he was accompanied by wife Carrie, Sir John Major, whose wife Norma was absent, and Tony Blair, along with his wife Sherry. And if I speak of foreign leaders, there was the Canadian leader Justin Trudeau with his wife Sophie, and the French President Emmanuel Macron with his wife Brigitte. Representing the US was the First Lady Jill Biden, accompanied by her granddaughter. And the pair were wearing complementary blue and yellow outfits, the colors of the Ukrainian flag. Remember, no US president has attended a British coronation, and President Biden followed that tradition. And some conservative MPs have criticized Biden for his absence, in fact, although he attended the funeral of Elizabeth II and has accepted an invitation from the king to pay a state visit to Britain. And if I speak of celebrities, there was Katy Perry, Lionel Richie, Nick Cave, along with Anton Day. Actress Dame Emma Thompson, who is good friends with the king, also arrived with her husband, actor Greg Wise. As for the coronation, it lasted about 2 hours, with the Archbishop of Canterbury anointing the king on the hands, head and chest with the holy oil. As for the Queen, the Archbishop anointed her on the forehead with the holy oil, and then he administered the oath to the king, his promise to govern the people with the king's hand on the Bible. The Archbishop asked, "Will you solemnly promise and swear to govern the people of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, your other realms, and the territories to any of them belonging or pertaining according to their respective laws and customs?" And the king responded, "I solemnly promise to do so." And at one point, the king lowered his head and kissed the Bible. And after the ceremony, the king and queen got into the iconic gold state coach, a horse-drawn carriage that is more than 200 years old. They left for another procession back to Buckingham Palace, and this procession retraced the same route as the one earlier in the day and lasted about 30 minutes. And at around 2:15 p.m. local time, members of the royal family appeared on the balcony of Buckingham Palace, a moment that thousands were waiting for there. They watched a fly past of military planes and helicopters belonging to the British Army, the Navy and the Air Force. And with that, this glorious spectacle came to an end. Or should I say, the spectacle and the celebrations are just getting started. After all, this is an event that Britain has been waiting for and has hosted after 70 years. And it involved the quintessential pomp, grandeur, the glitz and glamour that comes with the royal ceremonies. And on that note, joining me at this point is Andrew Whitehead. Andrew, what stood out for you as far as the ceremony is concerned? 70 years, some would say, is a long time for a ceremony to change as far as the traditions are concerned, to quote-unquote keep up with the time. Do you think that happened?
No, I don't. I think it was marvellous. It was wonderfully well choreographed. It was a real pageant. The ceremonial was fantastic. We had 4,000 members of the armed forces in the parade, from the palace, back to the palace. There was all the ceremonial, all the mystique of the monarchy. But it hadn't changed, really. It was a very traditional occasion, rather more traditional than I expected. It was almost medieval in a lot of the ceremonial, the anointing of the oils, the spurs, the armils, the orb, the sceptre, all that sort of stuff. And for those who like tradition, it was wonderful. But for a statement of the modern, I didn't see it.
He's been called a king who is ahead of his time. So would you agree that the ceremony did not quite reflect that? Because, see, let's, just talk about the ways in which the ceremony was seeing some changes in terms of the female clergy playing an important role, or the leaders of different faiths also being a part of it.
Yeah, the country has changed over the past 70 years since Queen Elizabeth's coronation. So we have women bishops, and they played a conspicuous role. That was right. There was an attempt to make this a statement of being Britain as a multi-faith, multiracial community. It felt to me a little bit box-ticking. This was, in essence, not simply a Christian ceremony. It was a Protestant ceremony, and it's the Church of England that was presiding. It was the Archbishop of Canterbury, the spiritual head of the Church of England, who was, in charge of the proceedings. And of course, we have an established church, a church established by law, and Charles has a duty to be head of it. And he was asked, "Will you be a true Protestant?" at one stage, and he was obliged to answer, "Yes, I will." So all those things really didn't feel terribly modern. And I think part of the problem and the challenge for Charles is he's now 74. It's quite old to be starting the big job of your life. And you could argue that in many ways his time was a generation or so ago. And then he probably was ahead of his time. Whether he's ahead of his time now, I think that's another question.
All right. He's been also called an eco-friendly king, the climate king. We will come to all those tags and labels in just a bit. Joining me at this point is also royal commentator Helena Schott. Thank you very much for being here, and what a day it's been. Well, the rain did not quite dampen the spirits. We also saw the quintessential pomp, the grandeur that comes with all of these royal ceremonies. But would you say that the ceremony in some ways sent out a message of changing Britain, or you don't think so?
I think yes, I think definitely. I think we've seen some changes. We need the pomp and ceremony, we need the tradition, we need the years and years and years of history that this brings. You know, I work with lots of American channels, and people were so excited. They were flying over here. They want to see it. They want our history. They want everything, and they look at everything in minutiae detail, and it makes everyone feel included, and it's exactly what Charles is putting out there. So I think it's you know, it has to continue. But yes, there's definitely a change. But you couldn't just have something like this without all the pomp and ceremony and all the meaning. And actually, when you go through all the facts and the ceremonial details, it's really of great interest, and the anointing and everything. It's things that people can get involved with and learn from. And I know the younger generation maybe aren't as interested as we found out, or they don't know. But you know, they will do. I honestly believe it. With King Charles being king now, he is so engaged. He brings everybody together. He truly cares. He cares about lots of different age groups, especially the younger generation. So actually it's a plus. And we're not just talking about here, we're talking about the Commonwealth, you know, 56 countries. He's fantastic with the Prince's Trust, which has been going, I think, since 1976, and now it's out there in the Commonwealth, and it's helping so many, you know, younger people. I think it's 11 to 30, over 1 million younger people now, and it's obviously going to be rolled out. Well, it's something to celebrate, and all the younger people that have learnt and gained so much from King Charles now through the charity, they can shout from the rooftops and say how great he is, and we'll have this ripple effect. And I think, you know, unfortunately Charles has come in at a time which is pretty hard, as we know. You know, honestly, cost of living, you know, the war, you name it, there's a lot going on. So it's a little bit of a damp time, and obviously everyone misses the late Queen. Of course, I think while watching the whole ceremony, everyone was thinking of the Queen, especially King Charles. And so he's got a lot to live up to. But do you know what? He's perfect for the job, because he wants to do it. He's totally committed, and he's got his Queen beside him, his rock.
Right. You know, just taking a cue from what Helena just mentioned, I can't help but notice the contrast in terms of the sentiment among the younger population and the older lot. The polls also reflecting that. Some of the younger people I've been speaking to, and I'm using the same words that they use, call the monarchy an outdated institution. They say that they no longer connect with it. They say that it doesn't really concern them. They don't really relate with the institution. The older population, however, believing it's about consistency, it's about tradition and continuity. This contrast in the sentiment, of course, is quite visible, Andrew.
The opinion polls indicate that very starkly.
Yes.
So among the under-25s, more under-25s want an elected head of state than want the continuation of a hereditary head of state. Among older age groups, and the older you get, the more pronounced it is, there's very strong support for the monarchy. And partly that is, of course, the young always have more of an appetite for change. They tend to be more radical. They're more questioning of established institutions. But I think there is an issue that the monarchy does seem to be, in my view, more mired in the past and looking towards the future. And it was different in 1953. The Queen came to the throne as a young mother in her mid-20s. The coronation in 1953 was seen as blowing away the cobwebs of the war years and the austerity that followed. We've now got a situation where we've got a cost of living crisis. The monarchy itself is a little bit dysfunctional. We've had scandals. Prince Harry was not on the balcony with his dad. The King's daughter-in-law wasn't even in the country. Not all his grandchildren were in the Abbey.
And this will continue to create a lot of chatter in the days ahead as well.
Well, I think, I mean, there's a lot of unfinished business there. And, you know, for people around the world, I mean, the royal family is a soap opera, and soap operas, you know, live on conflict. And there's certainly quite a lot of conflict in this family. But at the moment, I think that, you know, the future of the royal family and the future of the monarchy is not one of the big issues facing the country. So, you know, the cost of living crisis, the health service, the environment, they're all much more pressing. So I don't think there's any existential crisis as yet, but you're right, the young haven't bought into the idea of a monarchy.
All right, we will continue to piece together for our viewers what unfolded today over the last few hours, and we will continue to dissect the many opinions that have been coming through. WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the updates on the move.